Hello and welcome to an In the Field edition of the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic Practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. And as you might guess, we're still in the middle of looking for a place. Hopefully by the end of the month we'll have something and we can resume your regularly scheduled programming. But in the meantime, one of the requests that I got was for some information about Egyptian New Year, which actually is coming up. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about it this time. Most commonly you'll see it spelled Wep-Runpet. And in my book and my stuff I spell it Upet-Runpet. The only difference really is in the word for to open, because the name of the Egyptian New Year means literally the opening of the year. And when I have my Egyptology books out of storage, I'll be able to check more on the grammatical details, and we can talk more about that in another issue. But Wep-Runpet, opening of the year. The stellar occasion for Egyptian New Year, to indulge in a pun, is the rising of the dog star Sirius. Although the Egyptians didn't associate it with dogs, it was associated with goddesses, and specifically with Isis. And actually, if you were to see Sirius in the night sky, here in the northern hemisphere you would see it in the late summer through fall and winter and then into spring. In the southern hemisphere, well, it would still be the same time of year, but it would be summer for you guys. I'll see if I can put in a graphic so you can actually see where it is in relation to the constellation Orion. And interestingly, Orion was associated with Osiris, and so you have just below and to the right you have Isis in Sopdu. And around the same time, actually it was around the same time that the floods would come, but just before then Sirius would rise right before dawn, after having been out of the visible range of stars. And that was it's called the heliacal rising, before the sun. I explain a lot more of that. It's kind of complicated without having some graphics and things like that to sit here and talk about it. I'd love to be able to get some footage in an astronomy observatory and show you the night sky. There have actually been some very interesting studies done about that, and what did the ancient sky look like versus now. But you can get some good pointers and sort of a general overview from my book, Following the Sun. And actually there's some information about holidays and figuring out the dates. And there was so much stuff when I was researching that part that I wasn't able to fit in. That's going to be in my next book. And I'll take you through the whole liturgical year and, some things that I even found out since publishing this one. Back to New Year's. It wasn't like we do now, where you have New Year's Eve and then New Year's Day. There was actually 5 days in between, and those are called the 5 days upon the year. And those were the birthdays of the goddesses Osiris, Horus, Set, Isis, and Nephthys, or Nebet-Hat, in her Egyptian form. Nephthys is from the Greek. And the period in between was sort of like the normal rules of time were sort of suspended, and so it was a very precarious sort of time, and they did a lot of things to as sort of protection and trying to ward off evil during that time. And on the birth of Set, they tried to avoid doing important business. Of course, if Set is your patron, then maybe that's not so bad. But for most people, they tried not to do anything really, really important on a day that might be bad luck. And July 18th, or again August 1st if you're using the other calendar, because now Sirius rises 2 weeks later than it did 3,000 years ago. But that the first day of the year is the birth of Ra, and it commemorated the occasion of creation. So what kinds of things did they do to celebrate? Well, actually it was a pretty big deal. July 12th was the last day of the year, and actually I'm recording it on July 12th. It was called the Day of Mozid, and I'd have to do more research to figure out exactly what that meant. Mozu means to be born, but Mozid, that might have been more of an idiomatic expression. But a firstborn child would lead rites in honor of the dead, and they would also light special torches, and they would keep torches lit throughout the 5 days on the year to ward off evil. And what I find is oh, by the way, real quick, Darren, why don't you lean over and say hello? This is my husband, Darren.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah. We're crammed into one room right now, so he couldn't really get out of the picture. By the way, if you have any questions that you want to ask somebody about Christianity and if you're, pagan and you've got Christian family members you want to interact with, or, you've got some kind of a concern, shoot him our way, and I'll ask him. Maybe he can do a guest segment or something. So in the interim, I've found, let me see if I can get it in the frame here. Here we go. These kinds of candles you can get at, I've gotten some at Mexican grocery stores. You can get them at, dollar stores. And they're really great because you can burn these things for hours and hours and hours. Actually, I don't leave them overnight. Just burn them for a little while and then come back next day. The further down it gets, you end up having to use like a piece of incense or something to light it, because it gets to a point where just using a cigarette lighter, it's not going to fit down there. But they're great for festival candles. That's what I use them for. And because, we're lighting candles to dispel negativity, that's a good thing to do through, from now up through New Year's. Another thing they would do is they would honor Sekhmet, because she was the controller of fortune. And sometimes you'll see references online to the 7 arrows of Sekhmet. That had to do with the different pestilences and, demons and things that were at her beck and call. And, it's not like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. We know what they are. Help me out here, Darren. What are they? War,
famine, pestilence, war, and death.
Okay. Those are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Well, the 7 arrows of Sekhmet kind of varied depending on which region you went. They have a list of them from the Temple of Horus at Edfu, but it doesn't quite match a list from another temple. So it's can best be understood as just generally all of the nasty things that might, come up during the year. And Sekhmet had the power to keep them away. So they would honor Sekhmet in order to protect themselves from calamity. I know there are some groups that try to do this, and, I would love to be able to do this myself one of these days, to actually catch sunrise on the day of Egyptian New Year. But most of us, especially in the summertime, the sunrise is awfully early. So getting out there at 5:30 in the morning to catch it can be kind of a challenge. It's easier when it's on weekends, but this year it's on a Monday, so, be harder to do that. But one thing that I always do is try to make sure that my icon statues get exposed to sunlight, because that's something that they would do. In the temples, they would take the icons from the temples up to the roof or out into a courtyard and expose them to the sunlight, because they were being recharged by Ra. They were, reuniting with Ra at that point. And actually, towards their later history, they got into these very, very elaborate rites involving a mummy of Osiris, and transferring it from, one container to another, and, there were special spells that they had to do. It gets into really, really complicated stuff. But you can also honor the different gods and goddesses on their birthdays. And tomorrow will be the birthday of Osiris, then Horus. And if Set is your patron, then you definitely want to catch, let's see, it would be the 15th is his birthday. So, and again, if you're going by August 1st, just go back 3 days from that. So the 29th, you wish Set a happy birthday. And another thing you can do is give gifts to people. The Egyptians got into the habit of giving gifts to you know, family and friends, they've found artifacts that were inscribed with Happy New Year's on it. So just tell them it's Christmas in July, and that can be the excuse. So hopefully that'll give you some ideas for some things you can do this year. And if you miss out on doing it this year, that's okay. There are still a couple of holidays that I have yet to be able to actually observe something for it, but that's what next year's for. So for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon and Darren.
And Darren.
Wishing you Sin Empty.